Is it important to learn sex education?
Dilakukan teman-temannya di Malang, Jawa Timur. Tak hanya di
There are many cases of sexual violence that occur in Indonesia, and this proves that we must learn about sex. The recent rape case that occurred to a 14-year-old female student in Depok actually sexual and reproductive health education being taught from an early age. No statement that sometimes rape cases were committed consensually but later admitted to being raped when responding to rape cases sparked protest. On Wednesday, October 17, 2012, the Women's Alliance Against Rape had a demonstration in front of the Ministry of Education and Culture Office, Jakarta, to protest against new sexist and discriminatory statements. Faizal Marzuki, one of the protesters, said, "We ask the Minister of Education and Culture to make a assessment with the substance of protecting adult girls from sexual violence and discrimination, and not to carry girls for their pregnancies." One of the contents of the assessment of attitude of the Women's Alliance Against Rape is the need for sexual and reproductive health education for adolescents as part of the education curriculum plan. If teenagers got adequate knowledge about sexual and reproductive health rights, then rape cases could be prevented because teenagers would be able to identify sexual harassment. By having this knowledge, teenagers will also be able to make the right decisions and be responsible for themselves. Sex education in Indonesia is still considered a taboo subject and is given to children and adolescents only. Parents and adults feel uncomfortable and reluctant when children and adolescents ask questions related to sex and choose to divert the conversation or tell them if they will find out on their own as adults. One European Regional World Health Organization report even mentions that sex education can start at the age of 4. It certainly starts with simple, basic things first. In Chicago, USA, for example, kindergarten teachers began to introduce concepts such as my body, good touch versus bad touch, and living creatures reproducing to children. So far, when we talk about sex, what must people think of is sex? In fact, sex means sex that distinguishes man and woman biologically. Sexuality involves several things, including the biological dimension, which is related to the reproductive organs and how to maintain cleanliness and health, the psychological dimension. Sexuality is related to general identity, sexuality, and how to carry out its function as sexual beings, and how the environment influences the formation of views on sexuality and sexual behavior choices. Showing the sexual behavior is part of the culture that exists in society. There are two reasons why sex education is very important for teenagers. The first factor is that when children grow up to be teenagers, they don't understand sex education. The second factor from the ignorance of teenagers about sex and the health of their reproductive anatomy in the social environment. This is obvious only as a commodity, such as through media that present pornographic things, including videos, magazines, the internet, and even television shows. Even television is now leading to something like that. The impact of youth lack of understanding about sex education is that many negative things happen, such as high sex relations outside of marriage, unwanted pregnancies, transmission of the HIV virus, and so on. By learning about sex education, it is hoped that teenagers can keep their reproductive organs in their bodies, and other people are not allowed to touch their reproductive organs, especially young women. Adolescents' reproductive organs are the right of adolescents, and it is the responsibility of the adolescents themselves to protect them from unwanted things, delay the onset of sexual intercourse, reduce the frequency of sexual intercourse, reducing the number of partners to have sex, And last, increase the use of condoms and contraception.